This is Ken Pyle with the OTT TV. We're at Parks Associates Connections Conference at CTIA. We're with Albert Lai of Bright Cove. Albert, I know you're on a panel talking about premium content, securing premium content on mobile devices. So let's start with that topic and see where the conversation leads us.
Great. Yeah, later this afternoon we'll be speaking about the mobile device platform, the mobile ecosystem, and also discussing kind of that balance or that fight in the living room between OTT providers as well as pay television providers, and just discussing how mobile fits into that ecosystem and that equation.
Well, and as a bit of background, I mean, Bright Cove is kind of the arms dealer in these wars, I suppose, right?
Correct. So we work with both content publishers, cable programmers, as well as the kind of pay operators, and as well as pure OTT plays. So our goal really is to reduce the friction involved for delivering video and consuming video from the perspective of the consumer.
And I suppose on any screen, right?
Across any screen. And I think that, you know, the two areas that everyone struggles with, whether you're a pay TV operator, whether you're an OTT vendor, is just device fragmentation and of course monetization. You know, as we talk about this proliferation of screens, we also have a proliferation of standards or not quite standards. And so everyone is concerned about how do I easily and securely deliver high quality premium content? How do I measure that? How do I monetize it across every screen?
That makes sense. And with your role working with the content owners and service providers, and of course, you know, providing that end user experience, you must really have a good view of all the things that need to come together to kind of reduce that fragmentation.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the technology pieces is a little bit more simple. You know, we can say, all right, this protocol isn't quite there or doesn't quite work, or we can try to gauge or estimate what MPEG- or H.265, like where that's going to play out. And it's easy for us to do, you know, research and development, provide some, you know, new innovative products and reduce that friction and lower cost. But the business side is the piece that's very, very complex. You know, you have a lot of these long-standing media broadcast business models, you know, whether you're talking about, let's say, cable providers and, you know, the networks in terms of, you know, subscriber costs and these 10, 15-year content deals. Those are the pieces that are much more complex and take a much longer time for those to evolve.
And imagine a big part of what your business is, at least as I recall from looking in the back end, it's just setting up the business rules, right?
Correct. So it's ensuring that any publisher, whether you're, you know, a 10-person outfit or 10,000-person organization, that you are able to easily ingest and manage your content, apply business rules to determine, you know, where and how that content is published and distributed, whether it's to a desktop experience, a mobile experience, or a connected TV experience. And again, ensuring that it's securely delivered, that it's monetized, that it's measured across all those different screens.
Yeah, and that's got to be a huge challenge, because then at the consumer level, they don't care about all those rules. They just want their content, and you know, do you see that kind of that friction of, you know, how do you get around that, the consumer not really understanding why they're subscribed to this service and yet they can't see this movie or they can't see this sports program?
Yeah, one of the areas that we've been focused on the last couple of years has been TV everywhere, or TVE authentication. And that's certainly an area where there's just a lot of confusion in the marketplace, because as you said before, consumers just want to consume the content. They want to sit down in front of their TV and lean back, turn on their Xbox or Xbox One, which was announced today, or their Roku device, or, you know, click on their iPad and start watching content. They don't need to know or care about all the different content rules or blackout restrictions for, let's say, sports content, or have to go, hey, how come I have to actually, you know, type in my email address for my, you know, satellite provider, or I don't even remember what that is.
Right.
So yeah, consumers don't care. They just want to consume content. And from the perspective of Bright Cove, we want to make it easier so that publishers and content providers can do that in a secure, consistent, high-quality fashion.
And so, you know, you brought up the email point, and that is a really good point. I mean, are you guys looking at other ways to kind of make this an easier experience? You don't have to enter that email, or?
Well, we participate in OATC and work with a number of content providers as well as operators and other technology providers in that space. And so there's been a lot of discussion about how do we make that process super simple. It could be as simple as detecting that you're at home and not even asking for your email address or your password, or it could be utilizing other forms of identity. So, for example, your Facebook login or your Twitter handle. Obviously, there are other privacy issues around that, but again, these are areas that, the industry that we're focusing on, because again, we want to make it easier for any consumer to consume any piece of content, again, assuming that those rights and it's done in a secure way and it's monetized correctly.
Well, and you talk about monetization, I think you touched upon a little bit the whole advertising. I mean, clearly, you have a premium, no advertising type model, but then you do have these other networks that may be largely advertising supported. How are you seeing those ads kind of translated into the multi-screen world?
Certainly, many of our large broadcast and media customers see potential within mobile, but at the same time, they see what we call a revenue gap. They've always had this money coming in from traditional broadcast models, but it's not translating to the mobile world in an easy fashion. So one of our very large broadcast customers recently told us, they said, hey, look, even for just regular digital, they said mobile consumption is about 1.5 to 2 times desktop. So they're getting great traffic from mobile, but the revenue from mobile is only half.
Wow.
And so a lot of that has to do with, one, just when you think about advertising on a mobile device, well, you just don't have the same real estate. And two, people haven't thought of mobile inventory as something that's special, that's different. So you just can't apply the same kind of banner advertisements, or even pre-rolls and mid-rolls have to be rethought out in a way that makes more sense, so that you can actually think about that mobile audience or that connected TV audience and say, hey, we can actually make more, or we can create new sponsorship or monetization opportunities. So that's a transition that many of our customers are going through, but they now see absolutely the potential for mobile, and they are embracing it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does, that just is the whole chain, right, of has to change as far as, the ad agencies and the creative have to think of it in a different way, right? So it's back to your fragmentation type challenge.
Yeah, there was a conversation recently with the IAB group, and someone brought up the topic of, hey, should we be talking about video formats or ad creative formats? And somebody said, well, maybe that's more of an implementation issue, more of a technical issue. But then somebody else brought up the point of saying, look, at the end of the day, the IAB group, group is trying to standardize, advertising, and one of the keys is how do you ensure that that ad creative gets delivered to that end user. What you don't want to happen is somebody's waiting for that pre-roll and oops, it's the wrong format, or you're sitting back watching it on a beautiful 1080p display, and it comes up with something that's blurry and 50 kilobit, and it was meant for a mobile device. So you actually do have to think about that entire kind of end-to-end supply chain of content and commerce to be successful.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have separate paths at some points in the system as far as the creative and so forth. What about the idea of location-based advertising within the video? Is that kind of on people's radar screens, or is that still out there a ways?
We've heard more interest around that for live streaming use cases. So I would say in 2012, we heard a lot of media and broadcast customers talk about interest in live, whether it was discrete live events or 24/7 simulcast. And I think within the last 6 months, you've certainly seen a trend toward large programmers, ABC and others, that have now embraced 24/7 simulcast or are testing it out. So we're seeing much more interest around live streaming, and I think in those cases, having that location-based, advertising and ad targeting is really of interest to people. We're also saying not just for advertising, but content programming, where people want to say, well, today if I'm in Las Vegas, maybe tomorrow, or one of my colleagues, they're in Boston or they're in San Francisco, maybe they should get different content programming based off of their geographic location, not just advertising. Okay. So people are thinking about time and device and location to drive programming. So you don't have that notion of a linear broadcast, almost everything becomes very Pandora-esque.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like things are still a lot of things to be decided, but progress is being made. So, Albert, appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Great. Thanks for having me.